How you doing, guys? It's Anthony here. The shift. I've been talking about the shift for years. Shift happens and surviving the shift, and we're definitely collectively going through something that we've never been through before. I believe some of us have got memories from past lives which motivate us to sort of be at the front of this shift. But our jobs are really to be able to explain this shift in the most simple and authentic way as possible without all the fluff. Because of the amount of denial that exists in society, as well as all the distraction, the propaganda, as well as the control system which is there not just in the physical but also in other more subtle realms. And this short presentation will touch upon that, but that's for another time. So, authentic mindfulness. So a shift. The English dictionary says that a shift is a change in position, direction or tendency. And I can tell you now that as a human being, within the last 12 years from being 30, which was the start of the journey in the opposite direction of my life, to where I am now at 42, I am a completely different person. I'm the same person, I'm still Anthony, but I've gone on a journey, a healing journey, an introspective journey, which has fundamentally addressed all of my negative ego attributes. I'm not saying I'm perfect, I'm still a human being, but I have dramatically changed position and direction and tendency. I'm much more rounded, much more holistic, got stronger emotional constitution, I'm more mindful, less childish, and it's meant that I've had to change my behaviours, and it's meant I've had to go away for quite some time, not to another country, but I've gone away from the career and many of the people that I used to associate with, and I've reaped the benefits of that. You lose friends, but who gives a shit about that? A paradigm shift is described as a radical change in underlying beliefs or a complete change in thinking or belief systems that allows the creation of a new condition previously thought impossible or unacceptable. You tell people, like I was telling people 10, 12 years ago, that paedophilia was commonplace and what's the word for it? Lots of it happening basically within the Catholic Church, and you tell these religious church-going people, they just, you think you're off your head. But just look at the news now. Look at the banks. The banks failed in 2008. They failed. Now these people believe in cutthroat capitalism. No, they don't. They want capitalism for the poor and socialism for themselves. So we know that the banks are no longer fit for purpose. We know that the people at the top end of a lot of these religious organisations are no longer fit for purpose. There's issues within education, there's issues within policing, there's massive issues with the environment, there's issues on a community level. I mean, I look around as a community worker, and I'm also a reminiscence therapist, so I work with older people and take them on a journey into the past where things made more sense and there was a greater sense of belonging and community. And now that's more or less been destroyed, as well as the occupations that I used to work in have been destroyed by this government because of their ideology. And it's all changing, and there's nothing you can do about it at all. You've got to bend like that tree in Taoism. You've got to bend and go with it, basically. So we've got impossible and unacceptable things happening, impossible and unacceptable people leading, and it's about who are you and how can you improve yourself. Because with the increasing shift in the overall energetic soup, I want to say that, I say it in scientific terms, because the Heart Math Association, as well as many other organisations, have human frequency monitors. They've identified that each tree, because they've rigged these trees up in the California redwood, each tree produces its own electromagnetic signature, yeah, and it's completely unique. You as a human being have your own personal unique energetic signature, and we fit into a jigsaw of the overall energetic soup when we go out into workplaces and we spend time with our family. And if you are bringing about and taking steps towards your own personal shift, then you'll start to pick up and become more sensitive to the toxicity with other people with jobs and with places. But with this shift comes a new form of intelligence, which can appear to be absolute, what's the word for it? Absolute, it baffles the intellectual mind, the intellectual instinct. It battles that completely because the intellect can only take you so far. We'll go more into that. Okay, so paradigm shift. So the biggest thing that stops people's accelerated personal development is through denial. And it prevents also the evolution of organisations and countries because people have these very fixed, dogmatic, crystallised views on the world, and those people are in for a very hard time. So when a paradigm shift occurs and the truth emerges, it passes through 3 distinct stages. It's ridiculed, it's then violently opposed, and then it's accepted as being self-evident. So as we start to move through to 2022, 24, 2025, we'll start to see all of the stuff that people like David Icke and the beliefs and practices of our indigenous cousins and brothers and sisters, and we'll get into that a bit more detail in a moment, in terms of what they do to keep themselves together as well as rid themselves of negative emotions. They then automatically become more perceptive of the subtle realms. And this is what this new age is all about. We're going into a new age where people are being asked to trust more and trust themselves more, because the biggest thing we need on planet Earth is trust. So, I mean, you look at this denial thing, all the great people from Mahatma Gandhi to John Lennon to David Icke, all these people, who else we've got? Great musicians like Hendrix, when the power of love overcomes the love of power. All these people say the same thing. And what comes at the core of this authentic mindfulness is self-love. It's the people who don't love themselves. They worship themselves in terms of their ego and in terms of their attributes in being successful in the world. But when people go about their business causing mayhem and destruction, or being part of a system that causes that, an aggregate part, then you're going nowhere, basically. You're going to have to extricate yourself at some point and dig for victory. And this is an image going back to the war, where people in England were encouraged through a system, through advertisement, to grow their own food in hard times, become more self-responsible, and going back to basics. And that is what the best way of explaining what this authentic mindfulness is, because we've got so many idiots out there chasing carrots, potential promotions, the next new car, 3 holidays a year, new clothes, etc. And what is really needed, especially for the people who are working in positions of power, is to create a culture where we can come together collectively as a family, as a community, as a team or whatever, and purify and purgate these negative emotions. And what I see very, very common in the work that I do, self-pity and fear. I see it with the young men that I work with. I see it with children, especially in football. I see it, it's the commonplace state of mind, self-pity and fear, not letting go of what you've got, settling for second best. These people just exist because they don't have the courage to live appropriately. Whereas the indigenous cultures, or what is left of the indigenous cultures, have a wonderful history. And I would say also, when in England, when we did have full employment, when we did have jobs for all, when we did have social clubs and youth clubs and church brigades and all these, there were all these organisations and things for people to socialise and have a drink together and get and have lots of fun and whatnot, and as well as to be able to get things off our chest, which women tend to be better than men at that, because they have a stronger relationship intelligence quota than men, and that's why it's really important for men to do this work, because I see many men completely frozen in time from the childhood. So you've got a fully grown up man. Who's got these views of the world, and who might have worked hard and been successful, but from an emotional perspective, they're no better than an 8-year-old. So it requires digging. Now, how do we dig? Introspection. We reflect on our own personal behaviour. We try to weed out those negative ego tendencies. I will talk about those more in a future video. Meditation. Learning to experience the world and your internal state by shutting your eyes, locking yourself in a room, and just witnessing the mind and what's on your mind. Just witness it and observe it. It's called getting into the neutral observer point. And if you do it enough and you do it long enough, you can start to become aware of memories and traumas which are programs that are still running within the body, and they're also attached to particular organs, usually. And then you start to feel more. So this revolution is a revolution of sentience. We start to feel more. We start to come more out of the mind, become more neutral, and start to discern what our issues are, and bring a bit of calmness and peace into our life. The film Bird Box is a wonderful example of that. If you notice at the start of the video of the film Bird Box, the clue that they give you, which most people have missed out, is the first person to commit suicide by smashing her head against a window, is she has a phone just before it goes back to her. So it's literally being aware of these electromagnetic influences. The more you start to meditate and discern, the more sensitive you become of those, and you can start to then address them. But Bird Box is all about closing your eyes and trusting the inner self. It's completely eradicating yourself from the outside world and going inwards. When you take that to another level, breathing immediately, causes a big delay in terms of the monkey mind. And by breathing, you're immediately getting into your body, and you're immediately putting air into your system, and it's the best thing for overcoming anxiety. So we can do this personally. This authentic mindfulness must be done personally, but I use it within group settings, and I use it with large groups of people, and I act as a catalyst for people to share information, to share good memories, but also to release and talk about those things in the past, all those things which are bothering us, where we eradicate the feeling and the emotion of shame. Because there's so many people out there burdened with shame, and I get called shameless all the time, and I love it because I am shameless. Shame isn't a positive emotion. It just breaks you down. Courage. This is who I am. This is what authentic mindfulness is. This is who I am. Take it or leave it. If you don't like it, fuck off, basically. Obviously, you have to bring in an element of gentleness in there. I'm not just saying go around being a raving lunatic, but you have to have gentleness in there also. But when it comes down to it, you are the truth within yourself. You are sovereign. And this is when we get into the habit of sharing our resentments, affronting people, of not hiding our emotions, not being ashamed of our emotions, and finding creative ways to get rid of it. Women will talk on the phone about these things for a while. Women will watch films and cry. I do that myself. I've embraced the inner female. So learning to cry for men is so essential. Learning to pick up on the emotional states of those people around you, especially your wife or your girlfriend or your partner and your children. So when you're stuck in the outside world, you haven't got a fucking clue. You come home and it's all about you. And you see these men who work hard all week, and then, right, they're knackered, so right, I'll go out and play hard now. And this is what I'm saying, the children, they're not men. They're not actually working for the family. They'll say they are, but they're not really, because they're off playing golf and doing whatever they need to do and getting sniffed up and whatnot. So, but for them, that is their own little private bit of when men get together and get off their head and have a drink and whatnot. That is their own personal renewal and restoration, but it's not truly restorative, because it needs to be done in front of people. Their behaviour amongst their own peers isn't going to be put forward as weak or vulnerable, and that's the biggest issue for men, admitting your vulnerability. So often this authentic mindfulness and this catharsis is related to tragedy. And tragedy, all the Western ideologies and myths and Greek thinking are rooted in the tragedy. So you have to let yourself fall and fail, unfortunately. And when you allow yourself to fall and fail, it's amazing the transformation that can happen. But you've got to get over yourself. So we talked a bit about emotions. There's a really cool system been put together by a chap called Dr. Bradley Nelson, and it reveals how emotionally charged events from your past can still be haunting you in the form of trapped emotions and the emotional energies that literally inhabit your body. So this guy was doing chiropractic work as a professional 25 years, 30 years, and through all of his experience it worked out that he could deal with issues like terrible backs and postures and misalignments by identifying the trapped emotion with its name and the exact point it is attached to in the body. You have a chakra system which correlates with all of the major glands in the body, and with each gland and each chakra has an overall theme and meaning in terms of human development and human health. Okay, so I've worked with countless women who have issues in row 6 here, the glands and sexual organs. Yeah, because of all the people that have been, that are focused on and made issue out of, it's the females in terms of their own sense of sexuality and own sense of power. The world is unbalanced. There is such a thing as toxic masculinity, but ultimately these feelings are repressed, and you can usually find a load of kind of stuff from pride, shame, shock, unworthiness, worthlessness, overwhelm, lust. That's a big one for men. Lust, longing, jealousy, a big one for men and women. Jealousy, humiliation. So we can turn these negative experiences around and become so much more powerful. But the more that we deny these things that have happened to us and understand the fact that we've all been programmed to a ridiculous extent through all aspects of society, including our parents, and they themselves have been programmed. If you see someone who's a professional, who can deal with this stuff. I mean, I use this to identify issues, and they've been carrying things around with them for years, and some of these things they've carried around with them, they've come from their parents. So we're dealing with toxicity on an endemic level here. And when it comes to the heart, most people's hearts are completely shut down. This is why we see an enormous amount of heart disease in men, because men do not know haven't been taught how to express emotions and feelings. Yeah? They're taught, in order to be successful in the world, you've got to be a bastard. You've got to go out there and be ruthless. Yeah, and any form of emotion that's positive or even negative is weakness, and you will be absolutely vilified for it. So the goal is really to come out of the third dimension, which is the conscious mind, located in the solar plexus. Yeah, and bring the overall vibration into the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension is the astral dimension associated with the heart. When you start to work towards the heart, so I do heart meditations. There's very simple meditations, heart meditations, which you can learn from the Heart Math Association. But when you start coming from the heart, that's where your passion is. That's where your creativity is. That's how you can connect with people. Yeah, that's how you can work out if there's something wrong with your wife or your partner, because you become more sensitized, and it becomes more about the collective in terms of your own personal service, your own particular role, than just about little old me who's fighting fight and flight in the solar plexus. But this is a really nice little system put together by Dr. Bradley Nelson. I've used it. It does work. It does involve protocol, but you can research this more so at your own leisure. So this stuff about emotions, we get into the nitty-gritty now. So the ancients, and we'll look at the Egyptian myth, because the Egyptian myth and history is something that a lot of people relate to or understand or even will listen to. This is the goddess Ma'at, and when a person dies, you get stuffed into the underworld basically, and there's a reckoning that takes place. In the Christian faith, it's a different story, but it's based on the same principle. The pearly gates and whatnot. So Mart is associated with 360-degree view of evaluation, so Mart sees everything. What they do is they whip your organs out, take your heart out and place it on the scales. Yeah? And the heart is weighed against a feather. Okay, so what is the ultimate lesson in life? What would you think it is? It's lightheartedness. The struggle of maturity is to recover the seriousness of the child at play. Friedrich Nietzsche. So we've got this disease of seriousness and of men wanting to be businessmen, men wanting to be taken seriously, men wanting to be men with wonderful ideas that change the world, who and all these economical algorithms and whatnot, and they're so bound up in their own sense of self and their own sense of status. They've forgotten there's a little kid inside them that at some point in their lives have been told, shut up, don't say that, you can't say that, you can't feel that. And there's an emotional freeze that happens, and their overall energetic integrity is breached through a trapped emotion. And these trapped emotions can then let in other entities, and they bind onto us. And the film Monsters Inc., yeah, as well as The Matrix, those are the based visual cinematic representations you'll see of what is going on this planet. It is a prison planet, and only you can free yourself, and you've got to get in touch with the inner child. And people use that term and laugh at it and say, oh, it's a load of bollocks and whatnot. But having done years and years and years and years and years and years worth of purgation and energetic healing on myself, yeah, as well as train my mind, according to spiritual principles, I am just like a big dickhead now, and I just have fun, and things just seem to work out for me, and magical things happen in my life and synchronicities, and I have such meaning and depth in my life, and it's because of letting go of my ambitions as a man. I've let go of it completely, because ultimately they don't accept me anyway, because I'm just way beyond them anyway, to be honest with you, and I'm happy to say that. But ultimately, going back to your original blueprint as a child before you got fucked up is what you need to do. And that's going to mean you have to forgive people like your parents. I mean, forgive them. Talking about seriously working at forgiveness, there are people around who've had bad things done to them. But doesn't matter what they've had done to them, whether it be being part of a genocide in Rwanda or just like me, who've had a mum and dad split up at a young age. I've come to identify there was a fracture within my soul at that time, and I've only become aware of it in the later years, and I've had to go back at it and put a lot of conscious awareness around that memory and around certain parts of the body and practice forgiveness so that I can catharsize these negative emotions and come to understanding that my family love me, I love them. It makes no sense to continue me feeling left out and feeling like I've been hard done to. So it's about having the seriousness of the child at play, and that is having the courage as well as the passion to go out there and be yourself. There's not that many authentic people out there, so the ones who are on that path to authenticity, there is some work to be done, and there are opportunities for you to express yourself. It's just about your own personal perspective. So in terms of finish on this last slide here, in terms of integrative health, and we talked about this fourth dimensional thing before, surpassing the third dimension. We've got the physical. So there's lots and lots of very, very intelligent people out there, and they don't take care of themselves physically. And ultimately, your physicality is a representation of your mind, as well as your emotions, and as well as your spirituality. And as you start to become more aligned and more upright, your health should follow. So I'm not a physical therapist, but you understand what I'm saying. We talked a lot about the emotional stuff. This is really important for men especially, because they're just shit at it. A lot of them are shit at it, basically. So you've got to look at those, especially female people around you, or female kind of people around you. And it's about your relationships. What is the integrity of each and every relationship you've got? Does them people in your life, do they feel that you're supportive of them? Do they feel that you're attentive? What do your kids or what do younger people, what do your colleagues say? Do you need to form new friendships? Do you need to step away from certain relationships? But the emotional side is key from getting from the third to the fourth dimension. Intellectual, you can't deny the importance of intellectuality. You just can't deny it. It's just that when we have a group of people who make decisions for us, who have got strong intellectual quotient, but quite often they'll be useless emotionally. You put them into a real work setting, or you put them into a real life setting. Yeah. For example, some of these politicians like Rees-Mogg, he's been brought up with a silver spoon, gone to these posh schools and what have you. I can just look at this. I can look at these people and I can see them for what they are, and I can see just how traumatized they are. So a lot of people focus on this intellectual bias thing, and I'm not going to deny the importance of it, because ultimately you have to have a firm understanding of natural law and a firm understanding of yourself and how you can fit into the system and influence it. So that's your contemplation, really. It's really important that you read challenging materials, that you read, that you study philosophers, that you study particular comparative mythology, comparative religion. You want to go into the more esoteric stuff. That's where you'll get a lot of progress. But again, there's a lot of denial about the uses and practicalities of some of the esoteric arts, astrology, alchemy, Reiki. So these often go beyond most high IQ people, because they can only see in black and white and in three-dimensional vision. Okay? And spiritual. So your spirituality, your spiritual devotion to yourself, your own personal ideals. Do take time to read the works of people who come across to you, or a particular form of spirituality that works for you, whether it be Buddhism, esoteric Christianity, whatever works for you. You need to engage the higher mind. The higher mind must be engaged. It's a form of food that you must feed yourself, and it takes your mind away from those base things that people spend so much time and energy doing. For example, like earning money, being overly competitive, racism, all these things. When we start to understand more what the spiritual principles are, and the biggest spiritual principle is compassion, and it's the most needed principle within this country of the UK, as well as most Western worlds that are run by crazy ass weirdo men. And then we have the old person. So we're looking at a four-dimensional model. When we can balance out the IQ, the SQ, the EQ and the PQ, we then have the old person. And it acts almost like, if you imagine the word is called Shushumna in Hindu and Vedic traditions, and it's literally an energetic cord which goes right the way through the body, from the anus all the way through the top of the head. And when we pass certain spiritual tests and life tests, and we integrate, and we overcome the negative ego, there is a polar shift that occurs, again a shift which can raise your overall level of awareness to a higher level. But those four principles must be appropriately balanced, as in alchemy, for there to be an upward shooting motion which can then bring you into a higher state of being. And if you've had an awakening, you'll understand, and there are various different kinds of awakening, but it's an infinite process and the dimensions go infinite. But ultimately, that is the basics of the shift and how to survive it. I hope it's been useful for you. If you have any more questions or comments, don't hesitate to get stuck in. You can find me on Facebook and as well as YouTube. And again, there'll be more videos coming. But there you go. All the best. Goodbye.